Loving cars is like loving cats, a dynamic that can only be described as a consensual, abusive relationship. And much like a cat lover, we car enthusiasts have a plethora of bolts loose and we're missing the 10mm socket. A common phrase you'll hear in the car world is, cars are pain. Because this is the dark soul of hobbies, and the only escape is the sweet release of death. From a young age, I enjoy looking at cars in general, and as such, I will watch a lot of TV shows / movies with my dad about cars. When I was younger, I was particularly interested in two groups of cars, either the American muscle car era or the original JDM tuner era. However, I wouldn't actually try my hand on a project car until I was 22 years old. This would come after I would watch a video by Donut Media where Nolan, one of the mechanics of the show, decided to try to start up a 1952 Chrysler Imperial. Also, while during this, he talked about the difficulties on working on older cars, even though he himself has years of experience on working more modern cars. And after watching it, I seemed to find myself feeling just more motivated to try it out myself. And after some convincing by my friend, I'd eventually go out and buy a 1963 Rambler 660 Classic with a cast iron inline 6 engine and a 3-speed column shifter for the suspiciously low price of $800 that did not bite me in the ass later. The unloading process was horrendous as the car was sitting on flats from being abandoned for so many years. During this time, the exhaust pipe also fell off, so we had to rip it off because it was just so rusted by that point. Then after a long struggle of trying to get it on the driveway, we got it on there, and then my work could start. I would first start by removing the junk left behind in there. The smell can only be really described as musty, dusty, and just rat crap. So not the greatest scents of all time, but hey, I only paid $800 for it. Then I took out the front and back bench seats, which, on a personal note, for me, bench seats are better than the two front single seats on modern cars, and no one will change my mind about that. However, there was a problem with the front bench seat. The bolt that was holding it to the floor of the vehicle was sheared off, so we had to rip the floor up just to get it out of there. And after removing the seats and looking at them for a bit, I found out they can use some good old TLC, which luckily for me, my friend's dad was a former GM seat assembler, so I was clear on that front. After taking out the two bench seats, I would then wash out the inside while ripping out the carpet remaining on the floor that was really crusty. The next day I would move on to the engine bay area, which was slightly infested by wasps because they decided to move it to the air filter housing, which was so rusted that when I grabbed it, the metal started to become squishy and crunchy at the same time. From there, I took out the radiator, which started leaking orange radiator fluid everywhere. So I had to wash it out with a hose until it started running clear. After I was done doing that, I then went to the heart of the machine itself, the engine. As you can see from the photo, the engine may or may not have been caked in a layer of gunk that was both very thick and just sticky. Then I gave it a light rinse before moving the engine cover, the pin rods, and the carburetor. I then gathered the pieces that I took out of the engine, put them in a purple tote to clean them off. However, when I asked my stepdad what cleaner I should use, he got up, grabbed his keys, grabbed his gas tank, and took me to the gas station so we can buy diesel as a strong, effective cleaner. I would keep working on the car for another year or so. However, I would find a rust spot in the car that would compromise the chassis, so I would unfortunately have to throw the car into the junkyard, which was a bittersweet thing to do. However, I would take the experience that I have from this car and use it on my next project car, which will either be a 1958 Buick Riviera or a 97 Lada Riva